Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is July 27th, Wednesday, 2022, and the first half of our board meeting is a work session. And Dr. Kunkel, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to introduce Ms. Tracy Wright before she gives her presentation on our test scores. I want to thank Tracy for her efforts this past school year. She had a chance to lead our curriculum department, did a phenomenal job leading our curriculum department. Obviously, our test scores show the great results that she has done, and obviously working with her committees. We just want to publicly say thank you to Tracy for leading that department. Obviously, Mr. Richards is stepping in. Tracy will still be involved in the curriculum department, but looking forward to another successful year. So Mrs. Wright is here to present our test scores. Over the summer, we received our language arts scores. Is that correct? So remember back in the springtime, we presented the scores, and now we'll have the full package. So Mrs. Wright, the floor is yours, and thank you again.
Well, thank you. Oh, out.
Already? Yeah.
It went out just
Okay.
right at the time. So is this, how do I do?
I think that one's, I think that's unplugged. Is it?
Yep.
It sounds like it's
Okay.
okay.
There you go.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Kunkel. I appreciate it. I love working in the curriculum department. It's my pleasure, and I wasn't sure what this year was going to look like going into that position, but I learned a lot, and I'm a learner. I love to learn, and so I feel like it was a surprise for me how much I really did enjoy the work. Beyond what I've done in the past. So thank you for having me today. I just want to do a quick update since we did receive our English language arts scores over the summer. I did send those out, I believe, to the board, or at least made you aware that they were going to be available. So today I'm just going to share the released English language arts scores, all the scores for each building, and then share a timeline for receiving other state testing information. So in the previous presentation, I shared this for math, science, and social studies. I added this chart in from the previous one to show our spring 22 scores, and then added in some highlights from spring 2022. Lots of increases from previous years, increases from pre-pandemic, increases from a cohort. So I just want to explain that a little bit. So in, like over here in that last section, so this spring 21, 70% gets carried down over here to say this is that same group of kids coming into that grade. And so how did that compare? And so here that's a 14% increase for that group of students, 10% increase for the next group of students. So there's some real positives there. To share, with you, with the community. Our teachers and our students are amazing. Like, they impress me so much on like what they do in a year's time with students. And it's not just we're not preparing them for the test. We're teaching the state standards. And so just being able to go in depth, do the questioning and the depth of knowledge that they need to do to get to this point, they're impressing me all the time. So each of the buildings, I have a slide for each of them, and just to kind of hit some of the highlights. And so some of the highlights we shared with the community, and I started those highlights, but they weren't the only ones. It was just that there's a lot of information. So when I start looking at that and comparing cohorts and comparing previous data from the past 5 years, since 2018 anyways, that's really only 4 years worth of data since we didn't have data in 2020. I wanted to be able to share some of those other highlights with you as well. And so I shared this presentation already with you right before the meeting, so you'll have access to all this information. So I'm not going to go through every bit of it, but I do want you to stop me if you have any questions. I know that you probably got to see the information that was sent out to the community and that's been posted. I'm just really proud of everybody that's involved. So for the intermediate school, we had lots of highlights for them. Just like some of the highest scores that some of the, like fifth grade science, this is the highest score that we have that from the past 5 years. And they also tied with government as the highest percent proficient, 89% students proficient. That's a really big deal. You don't see that a whole lot. And so Government was our other one that scored 89%, so super impressive there. Middle school, I started the highlights, but you can see that there are several other ones. When I say that too, like, we know we have areas for growth. Like, we don't say, like, we don't look at our scores and say, wow, these are like amazing, and there's no work that we need to do. Like, our staff, like our department and our teaching staff, like, always see like where there's room to grow. So everybody's will look at this and they'll be able to say, like, okay, well, what do we need to do to get better? And that's another piece about being at Ross. Everybody's always striving to make improvements. I think a lot of our teachers are hard on themselves. Actually, they, will say, well, okay, but like, what about this? And how can I do this better? And how can I grow this group of students versus, a different population of students? And then high school, we hit a couple highlights on that already, but I added in the social study, the science, the biology score increased, and the state average score decreased. So we don't see that a whole lot. Usually it's like the state average score stays about the same, maybe moves up a little bit, but the state score actually decreased while we increased, so that was a real positive. And then for more OST information, that doesn't show up real well. I'll actually change the colors later, I guess. But what we're going to do next, so we have professional learning days on September 6th, November 8th, and January 2nd. And on those days, we'll have teacher data analysis, but it'll be based on the information that we have. This year, our teachers have access to the centralized reporting system, so they have access to their own data for their own students for the 2022 school year, spring 22 results. And so we're going to be able to look at that data and see how we can take that data and use it as high quality student data for the teacher evaluation system. And then mid-October, we'll get state report card released and value add reports for the administrators. So I say it's unofficial because I'm just going on what's happened in the past. So when I look in the past, this is typically when we get those results. And then in mid-November, the teachers will get their value add reports. And so those are our reports which show how staff perform with students in different populations of areas. So like the lowest 20% or the highest 20%, or just like your middle group of students. And so we've really not spent a lot of time looking at that and understanding it. And so we want to dive into that a little bit more because with the teacher evaluation system, if a teacher teaches a course that has value add data, then they have to use that for the teacher evaluation system from now on, moving forward. So we need to learn more about it. And teachers have always been interested, but it's a little complicated. And you have to, take the data and then say what you're going to do to change your instruction. And so we've got lots of great things planned, a lot of work to do, but as always, we're excited to do it and get started. Are there any questions that you guys have?
Do you have one? Yeah,
Go
a
ahead.
couple here if you don't mind.
Sure.
And then we do have some people in the crowd. If you guys have something, we could come to you here in a few minutes, if you do. So the overall state test scores over the last few years, did you say you've seen a lot of them dropping overall? And where I'm getting at is this, Tracy, is
Okay.
we were in school a lot during the pandemic.
Yes, yes.
And we did everything we can, and hats off to the teachers and everybody else. And our scores really kind of stayed the same or got better.
So,
But
Mr.
as
Van
the
Winkle.
state, that's what I was.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying here.
Yeah.
So like what we're looking at is like, if you look in here, there's that gap, right? And, sorry. So there was no state testing data spring 2020.
Right,
And
right.
so for our spring 2021 scores, our school buildings were the highest performing schools in Butler County, all of them based on the performance index. We can't give you that information right now for 2022.
Yeah.
That's what will get released in October.
Yeah.
But that, in Butler County, all, like our elementary, high school, middle school, were all the highest performing schools in Butler County based on performance index.
And I mean, as a parent, I felt like sometimes you almost take it for granted what it actually took to be in the buildings. It was
Oh.
really, it was a lot by a lot of people. And then the other thing, the fifth grade science scores
Yes.
is the highest they've been in since
So,
14.
well, and I haven't gone back, so I'd have to
Yeah.
pull more data, but,
Or
so
just
I
say
was trying to
since
get the
then, yeah.
community, like, in the past 5 years, like,
Correct.
this would be the highest score.
And
And
that was-
science isn't tested every year, so
Yeah.
that's kind of a complication too, is that you can't see what the past data is for some of the students, right? And so when students are moving through, like, you're saying, okay, I taught the standards, I did what we
Right.
need to do, but like,
Yeah,
that's
because one
very
of the
impressive.
compelling reasons to open up the intermediate school, there were a few.
Mhm.
One was we were over capacity at the middle school, which was number one. But the other one was the academic kind of structure of the 4th and 5th grade intermediate. And when that was told to us, I didn't really truly wrap my head around it, but the scores seemed to help a little bit
Yeah, I
with,
mean,
with that.
impressive in all areas, I mean, in
Correct.
science, math, and ELA.
Yep.
We spent a lot of time, Mr. Rettinger and I, talking about what is an intermediate school, what is an intermediate school for?
Yeah.
How does it differentiate between the middle school and elementary school? Like, how do we relay information to parents that way? We're looking at a revision of the report card right now, and so
Yeah.
we want that to be a part of what that vision is and mission is for
And
intermediate
especially
school.
socially. I mean,
Yeah, oh, absolutely,
My,
yes.
it was incredible for my daughter. And the very last thing is,
Sure.
and I've said this before, but I love the fact that we look at all students. So we look at, and this is just a kind of, we look at trying to get bad to be average students, average students to good, and good to great. And a lot of times, the good to great, people don't spend enough time on that because they're so worried about trying to bring the bottom up, I guess, if you would want to say.
And that's what that value added report.
It
really
does,
Breaks
yeah.
down those tiers.
And that's so impressive.
Yeah,
So
and so that'll be, that data that staff are really interested in digging into more.
Yeah.
Because they're really gonna be able to see where their strengths are and their areas for growth are. And we do the same thing with our students. We want our students to identify, their areas of strength and their areas for growth. And so our staff are learners all the time too, so they're doing
Absolutely.
the same thing.
But I do hate the fact that a teacher gets evaluated on test scores. I hate
Yeah,
that.
and it's improved. It's
I know that you
yeah.
have to do it. You have to have
Yeah.
something, but,
It's improved from the
and Andy's a
from the
numbers guy, so he
previous.
probably loves
Yeah.
it, and I don't like it, but,
Yeah, well,
so.
we'll
yeah.
agree with you on that.
Andy, did you have anything?
You hit on a lot of my questions. I guess the only other question I had outstanding was kind of, because of the pandemic, did the state adjust their standards at all?
No, not that we're aware of. When a test is given, there's always some questions on a state test that maybe is just there, like as a sample question or things like that. So we might have noticed a difference in the number of questions, but we don't get to see the test.
Yeah.
So for teachers, it's just like, oh, the students are done already, and then you're worried, like, why are they done already? But there was nothing for us that was to say, like, this is a change, because we never physically see the test. It's on the
So
computer,
in
we
general,
don't know.
it's a true apples to apples comparison?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
That's
Mrs.
all I
Webb,
have.
do you have anything? Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So before you close, again, on behalf of the board as well, thank you so much for stepping in this year and taking on that role, and really did a great job.
Well, thank you
Really
for
good
trusting
job.
me with
Yeah,
that. I
absolutely.
appreciate it. I've been very blessed in the Ross School District. I mean, I love being here. This is my home and my alma mater, right? So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Do we have any questions?
Thank
Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, no, go right
No,
ahead,
you're
yeah.
good.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Well, one of those big pieces is just teachers using data. So our teachers work hard, and so we don't have a lot of money to buy lots of different programs. I feel like some of the other schools get money because they're in continuous improvement, and so a lot of the products for intervention are geared towards schools like that. And so they cost more than we can afford per student. And so one of the programs that we have implemented, because we can buy seat licenses rather than student licenses, is Success Maker. And so we had Success Maker a while ago, and then we kind of had to let it go, and then we brought it back. And everybody's really finding that very useful for a personalized learning pathway for students. And so when we initially bought it, it was for like to target that group of students, like that lowest population. But there are some staff that are using it with their whole group to have a personalized learning experience. So when we talk about those kinds of things, that would end up being like a tier 2. So if we're trying to meet all the students' needs where they're at, trying to have students meet their own personalized learning goals, then that tool has been probably the one that's been used the most, like in a digital platform. Otherwise, we have, diagnostic assessments that we use. We use that data and the progress monitoring. So we have MAP, and we have Acadience Learning Online to gather some of those things. We have DRA for our reading, yeah, things like that, yes. Oh, no, thank you for coming today. Go ahead.
Good.
What is the structure next year? You keep talking about Jacob, and he's moving into your job, and you're moving
Okay, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. So when last summer, our curriculum director, Becky Tompkins, took a position in July. So it was around this time last year. And so it's not the best time to go searching for a new curriculum director. They had to ask me. I'm kind of like the assistant curriculum director, so I'm called an instructional specialist or a curriculum and instruction specialist. And so they asked me to step in, and I've never wanted to be the curriculum director of a district. I really like being the support person, really digging into the data and having more time to spend with data and with staff members as a coach. And so I did it for the year, but it was never my intention to roll into that. And so now it's going to go back to that same structure. So now we'll have a curriculum director, and then I'll be the support person who digs into the data and works in the buildings with staff. And I'm also the Title I coordinator, so I go into the buildings to work with the Title I staff and students.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
So we're gonna move into executive session for personnel reasons with no action to follow, correct?
Correct, yes.
Can we get a motion, a first for that, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we get a second, please?
Second.
Mrs. Webb? Mr. Castater, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Van Winkle,
Yes.
Mrs. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Schnell,
Yes.